We're going to learn the Maimer of Shabbos Parshas Tazria, Parshas Hachodesh Meborchim Hachodesh Nisan Tovshin Daled Mem, which is exactly 40 years ago. Just that 40 years ago was Parshas Tazria, the Shabbos of Borchim, which is also the 27th of Ador Sheni, and this year it's Parshas Shmini, the 27th of Ador Sheni. But nevertheless, both of the times it was, of course, Parshas Hachodesh, the fourth Parsha in the special Parshas. And last week in the Maimer, which we learned for Parshas Pora, about the red heifer, was mentioned that there's never an interruption. The Rebbe mentioned this many times. There's never an interruption of a Shabbos without a special Parsha between the Parshas Pora and Parshas Hachodesh, between the special reading of the red heifer, which is the idea of purification, and Parshas Hachodesh, which is the mitzvah of the Korban Pesach and the Passover offering and keeping Pesach. And this is, of course, from 40 years ago, which has, of course, a very special significance once something is 40 years, as we've mentioned in the past. Hachodesh Hazeh lochem reish chodoshim rishon hu lochem l'chodshei hashana. So this is from the Parsha of Boy, where God tells Moses, and this is really considered the first mitzvah in the Torah, and it's actually mentioned in the first Rashi in Torah, that the Torah really should have started from this mitzvah, because the Torah's primary purpose is to give us the commandments and the instructions of how we have to act and what we have to do. And famously, the Rashi says that the Torah started from Bereshis, from creation, to tell us that God created the world, and therefore gave whatever part to whomever He wanted, whatever part of the world, and therefore He gave the land of Eretz Yisrael to others, and He, by His will, He took it from them and He gave it to Klal Yisrael, to the Jewish people. And then, of course, subsequently we have the whole book of Genesis, and the beginning of the book of Exodus, Bereshis and Shemais, which have many lessons to teach us. And really, this is the first mitzvah that the Torah gives us as a people, given to Moshe Rabbeinu in Mitzrayim. So the mitzvah is God tells Moses, and He actually shows him the new moon, and He says, this Hachodesh is usually translated as a month, but the word Hachodesh, which means month, comes from the root of Chodosh, which is new, because the month starts when the moon is new. As a matter of fact, even in English, the word month comes from the word moon, and that's why we also have another word in Hebrew for a month, which we're going to speak about in a moment, which is Yerach. That's another, which also is like the word Yoreach, which means moon. That also means a month. So, Hachodesh Hazeh lochem reish chodoshim, this month will be for you, this new moon this is like a double instruction from God, that the month starts with the new moon, and this month is going to be the head of all months. Rishon hu lochem l'chodshei hashana, it's the first one for you for the months of the year. Umadaik was a Chag Admor Mur Shabbos Maseigen b'divrei Maschil Hachodesh to Shabbos Parshas Hachodesh Tovshin Ches. The Rebbe brings, or the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Rebbe, Rebbe Shalom Ber, says in his Maimer, which begins also with this verse, which he also said on the Shabbos of Hachodesh in the year of 1918, 5678, the Tzarech Lahavin Ba'aloi Tishrei Hu Rosh Hashanah. We all know that the first month, when we have Rosh Hashanah, which is known as New Year, but it should be known as head of the year, Rosh Hashanah is on the first day of Tishrei. So how is it then that this is called the first month of the year? So the Tzorach Lav Bali Tishrei Rosh Hashanah Mavur Bazeh Bateres Rosh. And as a matter of fact, the Middle Rebbe, Rabbi Doiv Ber, the second Rebbe, son of the Alter Rebbe, explains in his work on Rosh Hashanah called Ateres Rosh, Shehu Bedugmus HaRosh Shekoil Kol Hayud Beis Chadoshim. One of the reasons that it's called Rosh Hashanah, it's like a head, and the head includes in it all of the limbs of the body. So this is the head of the year. It includes all 12 months of the year. And each one of the months is split into 30 days. The month of Tishrei is the head. It's the head month, the head of the 12 months of the year. So how could he come and say that Nisan is the head of the months if the head of the year is Tishrei? And it's also brought there what is brought by King Solomon. And this is at the dedication of the first temple that Solomon built. And it's also read, actually, in the Haftorah on Sukkot. And they gathered to the King Solomon in the month of the Esonim, the strong ones. That's also a reference to Tishrei, which immediately at that spot in Melachim, in Kings 1, in chapter 8, so Tirgim Yoinison, Hu Hachodesh Hashvi, that the Kaya Korin Le Yarcha Kadmo Chan Hu Yarcha Shvio. He says that the Targum, the explanation and commentary of Yoinison ben Uziel, who has like an Aramaic translation / commentary on the Torah, similar to Targum Onkelos, which is not to be confused with Targum Yoinison ben Uziel. He says, when it says that the King Solomon gathered together the people in the month of Esonim, he says that is the 7th month. So we know now that Esonim is Tishrei, the 7th month. And he says, in the past, before, in the olden times, they called this the first month, Yarche Kadmo, the first month, Ucha'an, and presently, Hu Yarche Shvio. Just the word of Ucha'an has been researched, and it's a word that connotates and now. So, and nowadays, but it also means presently, it could also mean relative to what it was at the time of when this verse is describing. So meaning that what he's really saying is that till the Jew, and this is what the other commentaries there in Kings 1 say, that when the Jews went out of Egypt, so it sort of went, because the world was created in Tishrei, so then the first month, and we're going to talk about that here a little further, the first month was considered Tishrei, but since the Jewish people started out with their whole birthday was in Nisan, so now that became the first month. So that's why Ucha'an Hu Yarche Shvio. So therefore, then it's the 7th month from Nisan, which is the 7th month from Tishrei, is the head, so to speak. So, so just to clarify, Yonasan ben Uziel is saying that Chodesh Tishrei, which is now the 7th month from Nisan, because it used to be called the first, but now it's of course the 7th month, because the first month is Nisan. Okay. So we have to understand why is it that in the olden times Tishrei was the first month, and afterwards Nisan became the first month. The Rebbe continues quoting the Rebbe Rashab, that he explains that ha'hefresh ben Nisan l'Tishrei b'chlal hu ha'hefresh ben Teva l'nes shelamayla min ha'teva. The difference between Nisan and Tishrei in general is the difference between nature and miraculous occurrence, which a miracle is higher than nature. The Tishrei inyonei harosh le'inyonei teva. Tishrei is the head for natural occurrence. The Nisan hu harosh le'inyonei Nisan, and Nisan is the head for the miraculous occurrences. The Zehu madisa b'medrash, and that's why the medrash. This is what the medrash says. When God chose His world, He set for them Rosh Chodesh, the head of the months, and the years. And when He chose Jacob and his children, his offspring, He set for them and established for them the month of redemption, which is it's an interesting medrash, talking about the idea that He established there should be months, there should be years, and then He also established a special month that would be a month of redemption for the Jewish people, the descendants of Jacob. The abchira be'elamoi hu inyan haseda de'elam, inyan hateva. When He chose His world, that's the idea of the orderly fashion of the world, nature. Ubazeh Tishrei hu hachodesh harishon, and in that Tishrei is the first month. Amnon inyan Yaakov avonov ve'inyan hageula hu inyan shelamayla min hateva. Jacob and his descendants and redemption are higher than nature. V'zehu masha oz nikva Nisan l'chodesh harishon, and that is why then Nisan was set to be the first month. So we're talking about how it'll be even higher than nature in a miraculous way. Now the Rebbe is going to explain. And the Rebbe again continues to quote the Rebbe Rashab to explain the difference between miraculous, between nature, natural, and miraculous occurrences, between nature and miracles. Maybe Mashakosov Akeda the Vishnei Fanim Yecholim Leida Gadlus Haboire. He brings from the Akeda that there are two ways that we could know the greatness of the Creator. Aleph min hateva haynu mizeh shekol nyonei hateva lo yishbaisu. The first thing that shows us how great the Creator is nature. That in nature, everything is continuous. We just learned in the Rambam a few days ago, when we started the new cycle of the 44th cycle of studying the Rambam every day. So the Rambam brings this in the first set of laws of Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, when we have to learn about strengthening our knowledge of God and our love of God and fear of God. It goes by learning more about God. So one of the things that he brings is about the cycles and the spheres and the heavens, etc., and the galaxies and the orbits, and that these are continuous, and there has to be one that made them move, that makes them move continuously. So nature itself can show us the greatness of God. Ba'abeis al yidei hanes shehu shidud ma'roches hateva. And then the second way to know the greatness of God is exactly something which may be the opposite, the change from the rules of nature and hijacking nature, so to speak. So to rob nature of its rule, a miracle changes it. The idea of the fact that day and night they don't rest. And one of that also means that as the sun comes up, the sun goes down, there's day and there's night, and the galaxies, the sun and the moon, the stars, etc., are in their orbit, and they don't rest. This is continuous, and comes from the idea that God, like it says in the prophet Malachi, I am God and I haven't changed. Everything stays the same. And as it's explained in the responsa of Chacham Tzvi, that the idea of nature is the strength of God. God imbued the world with nature, and that's God's strength. And nevertheless, the idea that I am God who doesn't change, it's hidden. You don't see it. It looks natural. Pun intended. It's just it's just the norm. You don't see the godliness in the natural events of the world, in the natural order of events. And this is why one of the reasons that it's called. The word in Hebrew, actually, the word teva comes from a few different nuances, and one of them is like submersion, in like drowning in water or the like it says in the praise to God after the splitting of the sea. We're coming up to Pesach. We say it every day in the davening. Tubu v'yamsuf. They drowned in the Sea of Reeds, in the Red Sea. Oy tovu ba'aretz. And something is lodged in the ground. It is there, but it's hidden. Now, it never doesn't say it right over here, but it's the idea of a coin is also called a matbeya because it's stamped. It looks, it's engraved, and in a certain way, and that also comes from this word that it's there. Okay. So it's hidden. And like the Medrash says that there are certain things in the Torah which are they evoke questions, and nevertheless it says, God says, let's say it says, "Let us make man." So who are the us? Who's let us? And there was the Septuagint, the 70 scholars that had to translate the Torah. They changed. They all made the same changes, and some of the places they changed were that it should look like God is talking in the singular. But nevertheless, God says sometimes, and there's different Rashi comments on it, that God consults with the angels and He includes them, etc. And He says, and the Medrash says, if someone wants to make a mistake, let them make a mistake. Nevertheless, God was willing to risk and show His greatness that He includes every one of us, or whoever He's consulting with at that moment, and whoever wants to make a mistake can make a mistake. So here also the mistake that will be made here is that the world is running on its own, heaven forbid, and therefore there's no changes, and because the world goes like it goes in natural circumstances, and that's it, by itself, on its own. Oh no! So now a person could choose to really focus and look into nature and realize, wow, how great God is. Or they could say, wow, how great is nature, but God is hidden there, and choose not to see. But if there's a miracle, that's some kind of a revelation that's not explicit, not explicable, inexplicable in nature, and it doesn't make sense. And even people who choose not to believe, they say they have no explanation for this, and they use the word miracle because it means it wasn't natural. And And like the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, in the gate of the unity and the belief in God, that the revelation of godliness in the world comes through the righteous, and the wonders and signs and wonders that, in other words, the miraculous events in the Torah, and especially from the miracles and wonders that happened with the Exodus from Egypt. And this is the idea that we're talking about here, that this month, the month of Nisan, is the month of redemption. There was a revelation of godliness in that month. The whole word for miracle in the Holy Tongue is nes. And that is also similar to the term for like a flag and a banner. And it's like from the term harimu nes, and like to publicize something that is symbolic, but it illustrates something which is greater than what it illustrates. For instance, the flag or banner of a state or of a country. It's just a piece of cloth, let's say, but it symbolizes what it stands for and the significance of a flag. And people get all bent out of shape. The flag is sacred, and the flag is, because that's the idea of the nes, the symbol of what it shows. It's the idea of raising and uplifting. That in exchange, instead of it being according to the law of nature, when the thing will be sunk in, lodged below, so now, but when there's a miracle, this idea of who and how the world, who runs the world and how the world is running, it gets uplifted. It's not just sunk into nature. It becomes something which you recognize that there is one that runs this. So that happens to the miracle. It comes out of being lodged and sunk into just every day, the same old, to wow, it's uplifted, there's something else happened. So that we could see the matter as it is. Now the Rebbe starts to explain. Till here more he's explaining and quoting from the Rebbe Rashab, and now the Rebbe continues with his explanation. Here is the explanation. The Hinei B'chlol, let's say that Ha'ishtalshalus, yes, B'chines, Eres V'kelim. U'me'inyin Eres V'kelim, Sheb'chlol, let's say the Ha'ishtalshalus, Nimshachach HaKach, Gam B'ha'odam. We spoke about this, we mentioned this very briefly in previous Mamorim that we learned. But in the idea, in the scale of worlds, there are two ways that Chassidus, and for that matter, of course, Kabbalah, describe the idea of the energy and the creation, the vessel, and it's really called lights and vessels. And that's just because they are an analogy for the way God energizes the world. So we use the term for energy and as light, and then the material is the vessel, and the fusion of them together make up whatever it is that's being created and or described. So you have, and the Rebbe's Rebbe says elsewhere, the idea that in the energy there's also an energy in a vessel, and in the vessel there's energy in a vessel. In a sense, you have everything can be broken down more and more to its makeup of how it works and what it is. So we have the idea of oiris v'kelim. Oiris v'kelim sheb'chlol. So from this idea in general, this also comes to the person. It comes down to the person. So, in the simplest way, the person has the body, and then they have the soul. The soul would be the energy, the oir, and the body would be the keli, the vessel. Dugmas eres v'kelim. Kivin shagam ha'sa'ilam nasan b'libay shala adam, and the whole world is really ultimately made for the purpose of the human being serving God. And the verse tells us, Gam ha'sa'ilam nasan b'libay. God gave us the world in our heart, the heart of man. So the whole world really has the idea of a body and a soul. Everything in the world, and we are an illustration of the general sense of how the world works and how it runs. So, in general, in everything in the world, there's also a body and a soul. So, the Rebbe now quotes that Rambam, that the Maimonides, Maschel me'hagagalim b'loshen harambam, shebohem yeshne haguf shelahem v'nefesh shelahem. Beginning from the orbits, they have their body and their soul. And the Rambam says something very interesting there. The Rambam says that there's a conscious knowledge of God within the celestial, shall we say, planets, and there's different names of it, and the beings. And if I remember correctly, there's a story with, and I believe it was about the Rogatchover Goyen, Rabbi Yosef Rosen, but I don't remember offhand, but I remember the question that the questioner or heretic asked, and he read this piece in Maimonides. And he said, Maimonides says here clearly, he says that the planets and the orbits see God and they praise God, they perceive God, and they're aware of it, they're cognizant of it. And he laughed. If you look at it, he says, "This is not, this doesn't make any sense. They're just planets." And as a matter of fact, the Rambam there says they don't perceive as much as an angel does. An angel doesn't even have a physical makeup that we can see, or he could manifest like that. But anyway, you have to see what the Rambam says there. Interesting, complex ideas. But anyway, so this person says, how could the spheres, the planets, have a perception and a cognizant awareness of God? The Rogatchover, I believe it was, looked at him and said, "It's no biggie. You have a piece of meat in your skull, and it has a perception. So if the meat in your skull perceives, so the stardust or whatever it is it's made up of can perceive. This is how it is. This is how it is. What's the big deal?" I don't know if the guy was convinced or not, but this is the answer. In other words, if that's how God created it, just like we have a piece in our mind that perceives and thinks and is cognizant and aware and has an intellect, etc. So that's the material, how that is, and that thinks. So there's also so that's just a Maimer Hamuskes, we say parenthetically. So V'chein b'deimim tzmei yesh b'hem guf v'nefesh v'gam b'deimim. I don't know why it says here doimim, the inanimate, twice. So anyway, maybe it's just a typo. But in the animal kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, and in the mineral kingdom, also all have the soul and the body. Like it's brought in the Tanya in the Shari Yichud V'Emunah, in the name of the writings of the Arizal, the Luriana Kabbalah, Rabbi Isaac Luria, Shagam B'Doimim Yesh Nefesh, even the inanimate, the mineral, also has a soul. And especially according to the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, What is the soul of the inanimate? It's the godly power that continuously creates and causes it to be and therefore to remain and exist continuously and constantly. Now, in Tanya, it explains there, just very briefly, that God, when He creates the world, He continuously creates it the whole time. He has the wording there, and He imbues the world with His energy, His creative energy and power the whole time. And He says it's not like somebody a human being, who took existing material and then crafted something out of it. So for instance, somebody took silver and made a menorah, and then when he's done, he could let it go, put it down, and walk away. God had to make the matter. As the old joke says, get your own dirt, right? Because God had to make the dirt too. Okay. So, the Baal Shem Tov says that God's continuous creation, that's already the soul of the stone, because the stone doesn't walk. The other things you see has a little bit more of the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom for sure, it's walking around, etc. And of course, whoever has a good green thumb knows that if you sing nicely to your plant, it grows better. So you can even see the soul. Maybe. All right, listen. V'ha'hefresh bein tevel u'nez hu mahu ha'ikir haguf oy ha'nefesh. So what's the difference then between nature and miracle? It's what is the focus? What is the main thing? The body or the soul? There can be several ways that we could look at this. And the Rebbe continues. There's a way that you could only see the body in a revealed sense. And the soul is hidden completely. And then it's possible to err and to think that the world just goes and continues to function on its own. Heaven forbid. To the extent that it's like it says in Ezekiel regarding what Pharaoh said, that the river is mine and I created it. And then there's a way that the main thing is the soul. And the body takes no prominent position at all. Or at least, at the very least, the shaping of the matter, that the shaping takes the prominence, meaning the soul and how it goes about. So there is a body, but the soul rules and has dominion over it. To the extent that if the soul is stronger, then he doesn't pay so much attention to the to the limitations and the confines of the body. Sometimes somebody can push themselves further, and it's because of their will. It's in their nefesh. And this is in a material way, and most certainly in a spiritual way, that somebody can rule over what their body does. Perseverance, etc. And let's say long distance runners or whatever it may be. Elo sha'af apikein gam ve'ifn ze yesh laguf ezet tfisis mokem, that if necessary, nevertheless, even in this way, the body still has a certain amount of prominence. Elo sha'itz gabrus the nefesh al guf ve'ifn the seviv, and the fact that the soul is stronger and it rules over the body, that's in a way which we described previously. It's called soiviv, surrounding, meaning you see the body, but there's the whole person and what they stand for and what they're about is where the soul is and what the soul is. The chol hu b'vchinas haseviv shebe'erech le'elam is seviv kol almin. And this is the seviv, this encompassing power that is relative to the worlds. And that's like in a general sense, we have the idea of the way God encompasses all the worlds, and since God is God in his essence, and then he relates to the idea of creation, and then he relates to creation, just in a nutshell here, in two ways. In a way that he's going to create, and therefore the lowest world and the highest world has the same amount of this encompassment of the idea of God, who's really, in his essence, not at all possible to be within the worlds. And then there's the way God fills each world with the amount of energy and godliness that they can handle. So this world being the lowest world, the least amount. And the highest world, the world of Atzilus, let's say, the most amount. And that's called Memali Kol Almin, how he fills the worlds. But the Soviv Kol Almin is so far removed, but it's encompassing all the worlds because it's the way God is relating to the idea that he even creates something. So let's go back. No, I skip something here? No, I might have skipped before. So the main. Yeah, I think I skipped this a little earlier. So the main life and energy comes from this idea of Soviv, like it explains in Tanya in chapter 48. But it's hidden. So the life at this encompassing part, this energy, is not so tempered and measured and limited according to the limitations and boundaries of the vessel, the body. So therefore, when the aspect of this godly energy that's encompassing the physical, the way this is in the soul, so then when that's in play, then the body doesn't take so much prominence. You don't pay so much attention. Because in the person is feeling the godliness. And therefore the spirituality and the soul is taking the place of prominence. And therefore the body is secondary in that sense, although it's there. But nevertheless, the body still has some prominence. Elish is garbage, the nefesh al hagufi beifin the sever, but it the soul is still over it in a way that it's encompassing. It hasn't yet totally. It's still there. It's the one who's thinking, and it's still in one sense much higher. In another sense, there's still the body involved. The Choseh b'chinas haseviv sheberech lo'elim is seviv kol almin. This is what we jumped ahead here. All this is in the way that the Soviv relates to the world, because even though the Soviv is aloof, it's encompassing because it can't. We couldn't handle that type of energy, and therefore all the worlds are the same in that sense because they're all creations of God. So it doesn't matter if you're the lowliest or the highest. You're all experiencing Soviv in the same way, whatever it may be. But once there's a revelation of what the Soviv is really made up of, which is God, and therefore it's not at all even involved with the worlds, because God in his essence is just who God is without anything else, without any worlds, without any creation, without any relationship to anything. No, but he has to then start the creation, so then he creates in a very aloof sense, which is called Soviv. But then there's the Soviv Amiti, that means that it's the part of God which doesn't even get into the Soviv, which is relating to the worlds. So now when you're in tune with that, when you tap into that energy, the revelation is in such a way, the body takes up no prominence whatsoever. Now, usually it's the all-righteous who get to this type of level, but it's something that we learn about, that we could be aware of, that we could strive for at least a tip of that little iceberg. I know. It's not like that, that the soul was now victorious or stronger and won over the body. That the body has its limitations and it's measured out. It's finite. Just that the soul now can win them over, so to speak, and be stronger. The Adli is Gabras Bay from the Seviv, and then you'll be influential because you're tapping into this energy of Seviv that's encompassing, that's the soul. The Rebbe says it's more. He conducts himself like it's just the soul. Then therefore now the body is losing all of its focus. You're focusing totally on the spiritual, and therefore the body loses its prominence. Because if you're really focused on the soul, then the whole idea of limitations of the body and its parameters are just don't take up any space within the soul. So if you're tapped into the soul part, then the body is not even in play, so to speak. And this is the idea. We've talked about this previously, of self-sacrifice, of total devotion, to give over one's soul. The idea of self-sacrifice is higher than any limitation, any measurement. Not just that he fulfills the Torah in the mitzvahs according to what is required by the law. Like it would be a person has a soul, knows that God said do so and such, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be behaving like I should, and I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, and I'm going to not do what I shouldn't do, and that's how God imbues the soul. That's the memale, that's the amount of godliness that is measured into every world. That's called the koach memale, that fills the leidakshu who gamahad became a mitzvah. So then that would be doing the mitzvah sufficiently. And then not just that he does it with extra special care and with beautifying the mitzvahs, but even the mahadrin, to the extent that he does the mitzvahs in the most exquisite way possible, the best way possible. Now you're already tapping into a higher energy, the energy of Seviv, the energy that's encompassing the soul, that comes from its higher source within God, that he doesn't even imbue the worlds with this, but we're aware of it. And he's saying, let's get to that. Then that would be the Seviv, that would be in relation to the body, and like the Seviv, the encompassing energy that's in relation to the worlds, but then all the worlds are equal, but it's a much higher level of godliness. Now that I'm going to say, no, it goes even higher than that. More than that, the beautifying the mitzvah, and the mitzvah in and of itself, the body of the mitzvah, the performance, the essential mitzvah, he be'efen the l'mayla mechom didivak bolets in a way which is higher than any measurement and limitation. Gam kishezeh yeser mishlish, like it says, this is more than a third, which is a nuance here that explains that he gives it as all. because he's in a fashion, in a movement which is higher than any limitation, measurement and limitation, because he's in tune and tapping into the energy of God's essence, which is higher than God, the way God even wanted to now relate to worlds and create. If he's doing the third or more than a third, or how much he's giving of himself, giving charity, the late action doesn't just give charity according to what is required by the law. Meiser, a tithe, 10% or a fifth, 20%. The late action or he gives more than a fifth. For the healing of his soul, like it says in the Hachodesh Hazeh, where they're speaking about the charity there. So he says that it's, the Talmud says a person shouldn't give away more than a fifth of their income, more than 20%. So if so, why the Alter Rebbe is asking that people give charity, and it's so important, tzedakah, it's related to so many things and beneficial. So there he says that, look, if God forbid somebody has doctor bills, you give more, you give whatever you need. So for the healing of the body, you give more than 20% of one's income. So for the healing of the soul, you could do that too. So that's the nuance here of the refuah hanefesh, the healing of the soul. But ultimately, this is still, again, making a calculation. Okay, I have to, okay, so 20% is this much. I'll give more because I have some more healing for my soul to do. And there's a lot of calculation involved. The Mekiv and the Mashanes and Yesim Mechemishim, it's at a time to put an nefesh. Because I'm giving more than 20% because of the healing of my soul. Because he's in a way that's higher than measurement and limitation, he doesn't make any calculations whatsoever. These three ways of doing it, the way that it will be proper, the way that it will be beautiful, and the way that it's without any, in the best way possible, and the way with Mesiras Nefesh. And the Rebbe took it in three levels: the idea of soiviv, the idea of amali, the idea of soiviv, and in other words, how much energy there is that you're in tune with, just so, and then the energy of soiviv, the encompassing energy, and then the soiviv amiti, the way you're tapping into what God really is and what God really wants, and what God is in His essence, which is higher than even any creation, because we're striving to be in tune with that part of God, and that is an impetus to do things without any limitation whatsoever, not to even make the calculations, just to get involved, and get involved in the greatest way possible. So he said that, so the three ways is b'chol levavcha, with all your heart, like we say in the Shema, serving God, how the soul is in the body, then with all your soul, the encompassing energy, the way it's still in relation to the body. Here's it's a typo in mine. You might say in that one also it says the bekach, but it should read the bechol. Oh, yeah. It's a typo. And the serving God with all of your might. That is serving God that comes with the true encompassing energy, meaning the essence of God, the Mesiras Nefesh, the self-sacrifice that we spoke of earlier. The idea of with all your might, that's higher than any limitation at all. And as we like to say, you can take this to the bank. And the Rebbe says, you could say, Shegimul in Yonim Eile B'Shorsham, Hein Gimel HaBechines HaMevuores B'Kam Mekoymes. We have to say, Dov B'Shem Homre, Shimon Achman says, you take this to the bank. That these three things in their root, those are the three levels of Mevuores B'Kam Mekoymes that are explained in several places in Chassidus, including in Tanya, Mamala Kol Almim, Seviv Kol Almim, V'Kula Kamet Lechoshiv. So the idea of these worlds that we spoke of, that the way God imbues the world and fills the worlds, each one according to how much it could handle, and then the way God encompasses the world, the energy that He's going to create and relate to the world, and then everything in relation to God is nothing. It has no value whatsoever. In other words, not God created it, but if you look at it in relation to the Creator in His essence is so aloof and removed and awesome and great, etc., that any creation, no matter what it is, no matter how awesome or incredible or amazing it may be, it's nothing in relation to God. So kula, all of it, kamei kiloi choshev. Before Him, it's like it has no, it's equal to nothing. It's like not even there. It's not even, you can't even calculate, you can't even think about it. Not like it's as if it's not there. It's not there. As it's explained at length in Chassidus, that it's really nothing. And this reminds me of the story of the kid who learned this idea in school, and he learned that everything is nothing. He came home, and his father asked him, "What did you learn in school?" He said, "I learned that everything is nothing. In relation to God, everything is nothing. And that's it." Said, "Really? Yeah, everything is nothing. Okay, good. That was nice that it is. Yeah, God is great. And God is so great, and everything is nothing. That's it. And we're all..." So the father said, "Well, impressive. He says, "Okay, now it's time for homework." He says, "No, homework is nothing. It's nothing. Homework is nothing." The father said, in those days, there was when corporal punishment was still around, and he just had the symbolic. He had his little belt on the wall, the strap. He says, "Okay, if the homework is nothing, okay, I'll tell you what, my dear little son, take that nothing that's doing nothing on that nothing, and I'm going to take that nothing and do nothing to your nothing. If you don't do..." He's okay, I'll do my homework. So that's in relation to how we look at it. To us, we see everything, but if you look at what it is in relation to God, it's not only like nothing; it is nothing. But that's a lengthier topic. But the Rebbe touches upon it over here. Well, Pikol and Al Yuvon. So now the Rebbe is going to get back to where does Tishrei come in as the first month and Nisan. And then, by the way, the Rebbe discusses this in other Memorim too. And he focuses on different nuances of this idea of Tishrei and Nisan in different places. But now we're learning this one. V'al and Al Yovim Masha Tishrei Hu Rosh Hashanah Shabei Nipshech Chayis Al Kol Hashanah Kula Gam Hachodesh Nisan. So this we can understand that which Tishrei is the head of the year, and from Tishrei we get the life and energy for the whole year, including the month of Nisan. Begam Nisan, but on the other hand, Nisan is also Hu Reish Chodesh V'Rishon L'Chodshei Hashanah. It's the head of the months, the head of all the months of the year. Shegam Boi Nimshach Chayis Al Kol Hashanah, that it gives energy and life to the rest of the year. Gam Al Chedesh Tishrei. That means Nisan influences Tishrei too, if it's the head of the months. Shalach and Nikra Tishrei B'Shem Chedesh Hashvi. Therefore, Tishrei ultimately is called the 7th month, even though it's a Rosh Hashanah, but it's the 7th month from Nisan. Because there is an advantage in nature. And the way we serve God in the way that is connected directly to the body on the most on the level which is most generic, so to speak. It's not miraculous. And there's there's a nature, and then there's the miracle. There's an advantage in a miracle. And serving God, serving God which is in higher than measurement and limitation. So there's the regular, then there's the higher than limitation, and then there's the ultimate. That's not a natural weight. If you go higher than measurement and limitation, L'kabel mizulasa. Therefore, both of them have to be made up of the other, and they have to receive from the other. And there has to be a fusion of miracle within the nature, and a fusion of nature within the miracle. And they each include the other. Bezehu Masha Tishrei hu harosh, v'gam Nisan hu harosh, and therefore Tishrei is considered the head of the year, in other words, and Nisan is the head of all months. The Tishrei mashpia hamali leteva, gam b'haved de Nisan, Tishrei imbues the advantage of nature in the service of Nisan, which is symbolizing, of course, the miracles. Hainu shagam b'haved shelamaylam didav akbola tia b'bechinas pnimius be'evin hashayach leguf, because even when you serve higher, serving God in a way that's higher than any a measurement limitation, it has to be in a way that's real and that is inwardly and that's assimilated totally within oneself. When we are made up of a body, so we and the ultimate of creation, like we've discussed, is to serve God in this world with physical mitzvahs, the physical body. But then to tap into the energy and the focus of the godliness and to bring that into this world. So therefore, there has to be the focus of Nisan, the focus of what's higher than limitation and measurement has to be imbued in a way that's connected to the body. V'Nisan mashpia hamayla denes gam b'aved l'chesh Tishrei. So it works both ways. Tishrei shares its shall we use the word embodiment? No. The idea of I don't want to use either the word like, carnal, this kind of thing. Tishrei wants to put the idea of the physical and the body into the miracle part. And it goes the vice versa, that the miracle part, Nisan, influences the body with the miraculous part. So again, Nisan imbues the advantage of miracle in the service of Tishrei. Even the nitty-gritty serving God, which is day in, day out, and how we perform the mitzvahs, should also be imbued with the miraculous and the higher and the loftier. And that's without limitation, without measurement. That's why he was called the first Tishrei was called the first month. When the world was created, first month. But now it's called the seventh month because Nisan became the first. Last Targum Yonis and Menozil that we quoted earlier says. Why? You say that because this is the way it works. You have to first go to the light, from the light, and then you can go to the heavier and to the more complex. Therefore, at the beginning, it was back in the day that Tishrei was the first month because it was more simple. It was creation, it was nature. Shu Harash, and that was the head. That gave us the power to serve God with measurement and limitation. And after, now this is the way we have it in our yearly cycle, in every single year. So we start with the month of Tishrei, and we charge up, and we start with how we do things in the best way possible, but in the natural way of events, and in the day-to-day, orderly fashion, with what we have, etc. And if we do that properly, all of these months, through the month of Adar, Uba Gufa Ad L'Siyam Hachodesh, and Adar itself till the end of the month. Shabbos Ha'achron Shabbai, the last Shabbos, the Shabbos that blesses this, and is always the last Shabbos of Adar. Hinechan, that means now, B'Shabbos Ha'achron, the Chodesh Adar, the final Shabbos of Adar, So Shabbos Vorchim Nissen, which is the Shabbos which blesses Nissen. That's coming up this week, for ladies and gentlemen. Shabbos Parshas Hachodesh. Boim Laved Nissen Shel Dil Mailim B'Lag. We come to Nissen, which is higher than measurement and limitation. And then suddenly that becomes the head even to the Tishrei that gave us the power to get to this stage. That takes over. And now it's going to influence retroactively and forward the way that we take it the next Tishrei, because we continue to grow. That's why it's in a circle. Circular. Shaloch and Tishrei Yach Shiviyah, and then Tishrei is the 7th month. Shegam avodah shebechinas ishlapshus imishpas v'chdura, because now the next Tishrei will come, and then we'll get to the way we serve God in our day to day. Is also been influenced and permeated by the ideas and the energy which is higher than measurement and limitation. Especially on Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month, the head of the month, which is this whole idea of the level of this new month for you, this rebirth and new burst of energy. Then you have the revelation, like you can actually show it and point to it with your finger and say, here, this is it. And like the Medrash says, that doesn't say it here explicitly, but it of course alludes to it, that God actually showed Moses the new moon in the sky. And actually some of the Medrash say he pointed to it with his finger. Whatever that may mean. And this is what we mean when we say this month is the head of the months. The Hachodesh Nissen hu Rosh Hashanah shebei nimshach ha'inyan d'hanhaga nisis va'avoda shelamayla magbola kol yud beis chodshei Hashanah. The Mishnah tells us that there are 4 really Rosh Hashanahs. So ultimately, the first day of Nissen is the Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year for the years of the rule of a king. So let's say somebody, a king was coronated on Erev Rosh Chodesh Nissen. Then 2 days later, when they write the documents, they write already in the 2nd year of the king, this and this. So the documents that are written the last day of the month, or let's say it was coordinated 2 days before, for the last 2 days of the month, we'll say the 1st year of king this and this. Or, and if he was coronated on the 2nd day of Nisan, they'll write it for almost a year. But as soon as Rosh Chodesh Nisan comes, it goes in the 2nd year of this king's rule. And it's also the first month for the regalim, Shalosh regalim. There are the 3 Nisan. So Nisan is considered the first, and it had to do with the difference if you had to bring an animal, if you had three holidays, 3 festivals to bring the things that you pledged, or there's a discussion in the Talmud if you have 3 that have to start with Nisan. So then if you made it, you could really get it if you did it after Pesach. Then you have an extra full year, because it didn't start yet. And it starts from the next Pesach. So if you made it right after Pesach, you have almost 2 years to bring it. And there are other implications too, which are not important for right now. So, again, so this brings down, this is the head of the year, we bring down the conduct of the world of miracles, the miraculous way, and the service which is higher than limitation. I'll call you on all 12 months of the year. That's where the verse says this month, and the word for this is Hazeh, this one. How does that sound in English? This one. We just say this one. Hazeh, Zeh b'gematria yud beis. So, the word Zeh, we say Zeh, and sometimes the Torah just says Zeh, and here it says Hazeh, this one in particular, with the Hey Hayedio, with the Hey that describes a particular one. So, the word Zeh has the numerical value of 12, Yud Beis. Zeh b'gematria Yud Beis, kuvu baruch hu v'drushet mora zakrat mora mtzoy bad mora tzemach tzedek v'nasei shalach, as is explained at length in the discourses of the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe and the Tzemach Tzedek, the first and the second and the third Rebbeim, and the subsequent Rebbeim that came after them. Of course, the number 12 corresponds to the 12 tribes, and there are many other significant ideas with 12, the points, etc., Kabbalistically, and that also is part of the symbolism of the higher than limitation and measurement, as the Rebbeim explained in those discourses. So the Rebbe just mentions that nuance. And so they're serving God in the way of Nisan, which is higher than limitation, especially when it's in a way of lechatchila river, that we right from the start we're over the top. We like said more Maharash, like the Rebbe Maharash, like the fourth Rebbe taught, that everyone says, if you can't go under, then you go over. But I say to go in the first place over the top, to go just straight up, straight forward, and do it the best way. Then we get to this month that it's called, this one in particular, Hagilui, the revelation, the Bechin Hazeh, the level of Zeh, the idea that you could actually see it. You could point to it with your finger and say, here it is. And like it says twice, Zeh, like we were saying in the verse, so, like in the future, Mashiach comes, we'll say twice the word Zeh, like it says this in the Gemara, the end of Sechtas Tainus. We say here, we'll say on that day, here is the God, and we like I'm showing, Zeh Hashem Kivinuloi, this is the God that we awaited him, we waited for him and yearned for him. So, like it says in Isaiah, the Beis Pam Zeh, Beis Pam Kitoiv, the two times that it says Zeh, this one in this verse, are the two times that correspond to the two times that it says that it was good in creation. Double, 2 times it says Kitoiv. And here the Rebbe doesn't say it right here, but Toiv is the same numerical value as Hazeh. Now, it doesn't say it here, but this is just factual. So, and that's what it says here in the pasuk. Over here, the pasuk just says Zeh twice, but it's corresponding to the twice, the double good, Ki Toiv v'Zeh sheyachim zeh l'Zeh. Good and this are connected to each other. The Toiv hu Tiperes v'Zeh hu Zo. So Kabbalistically, just to review this, excuse me, in brief, Tiferes, which is made up of chesed and gvura together, kindness and severity. That sphira, when it's made up of both, and then that's already toiv. Toiv is that is beauty. You have to have it, each one of them on their own also, but you have it when they're measured. That's the third sphira, and that lines up in the center also. Zeh is also then referring also to Zoh, which is really all of the 6 spheres, and the Rebbe just here evokes their being related to each other. And like we just learned in the Tanya, that all of the the revelations that'll be in the world to come, in the future to come, when Mashiach comes, are dependent on our service and how we serve God now. When during the exile, so then that means that we could already have this revelation of Zeh now, not just when Mashiach comes. This is the wonders and the the signs and the wonders, and the miracles that happen through the all righteous. And especially that the Rebbe's Rebbe, his father-in-law, the Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, revealed, and he actually said that this should be publicized. That the way that the Rebbe Marash, the fourth Rebbe, Rebbe Shmuel, he conducted himself like in a way, in a manner, in a fashion of the Baal Shem Tov. It's called Baal Shem's Haga. The Baal Shem Tov was well known for his miraculous way of, he traveled quickly and he did all kinds of things. He was a well-known miracle worker. Well, that means also in what we have in day-to-day life, we also have to have Baal Shem's Haga. But it doesn't mean we have to perform miracles. It means we have to give it all we got. We have to do it, and we have to have miracle in how we live our life. That's symbolized by self-sacrifice. Mesiras Nefesh means that you're totally devoted to do something when it's tough, to do something when we don't want to do it, and to put down something you shouldn't have. It takes Mesiras Nefesh, a different kind of Mesiras Nefesh. It used to be to do it even in the face of to be defined in the face of severe pressure. That was physical pressure. That was back in the day, and back in the old places. We pray we don't have that type of Mesiras Nefesh, but the Rebbe says in other places the Mesiras Nefesh now, when we live in abundance, and other has a different type of Mesiras Nefesh. That's a very significant type of Mesiras Nefesh, and in a certain sense higher than that kind of Mesiras Nefesh, the self-sacrifice. And here the Rebbe says higher than any measurement limitation. The Hirotz and Shabbos Vorchim Nis and Shabbos Pascha Hachodesh Novai Beifin L'Chatchila Riber Lagula. So may it be the will of God that from the Shabbos that blesses the month of Nisan, the Shabbos of Hachodesh, when we read this special portion in the Torah, in the second Torah, Novi will come in a way of L'Chatchila Riber, that over the top just to start with, to the redemption. Novi Beifin L'Chatchila Riber Lagula B'chinis Nisan Beis Nunin Nisan Nasaloi will come to the redemption, which happens in Nisan. Like it says in the Gemara, that the month of Nisan has two nuns in it, and those stand for Nes and Nisan, miracle, and miracle within miracles. That the preparation for the redemption would be in such a fashion that therefore will be already on Pesach, and then before that, and the first day of the month of Nisan, Hachodesh Nisan, will be Be'eretz HaKadosh, in the holy land of Yerushalayim HaKadosh, in the holy city of Jerusalem of Har HaKadosh, and on the holy mount. The Bias Mashiach that came with the coming of our righteous Mashiach, and hey, Rabbi MM Feller, speedily in our days, actually so. L'chaim.